Hi, I'm Britton LaRue, and this is Moon to Moon. Moon to Moon is a space to consider, celebrate, and share the ways we come home to ourselves, anchor through change, and uncover our power. 1 month, one phase, one loving step at a time. Welcome back to Moon. It's Britton, and I'm feeling really joyous and expansive here under the full moon energy. Just took a little nap. My voice is a little thick from a Sunday nap. And I'm excited to be connected with you here in this episode on Enchanting, Justice, and the Erotic with Minnis. I've been sitting on this conversation for a couple of months. You know, like sitting on a golden egg, just listening for the right timing to release this into the world and share it with listeners. Maria is a Leo sun, and our conversation is both very Leonine and very Aquarian. So I'm trusting that this is the just right timing. Before I introduce Maria, I wanted to share a little bit about things going on. Here as a human, I'm holding being a mother to a senior in high school and a freshman in high school. I have this 1 year where they're both in high school together. One at the end and one at the beginning. It feels like just a really exquisite time. And I'm really turning towards the present moment, appreciating what I have, and wanting to be with it, wanting to attune to it and be responsive to it with deep wells of gratitude for the gift of being the mother of these two young beings, these young women who just take my breath away, always have. It is something to feel that release. That release very emergent right now. And I do feel that all parenting is that release, like you're in the release from the beginning. And there are also these windows where it's like hyper dilated. And so I'm very there. I had the most extraordinary Saturday yesterday. We don't have kids this weekend. Me and Matt, we live separately. But we have coordinated weekends where we're either with kids or without kids. So we were at the front of the day, had delicious conversation over our coffee, just sitting back in our robes, like, what a life that we just get to sit here and have coffee with one another. And I knew I needed to get some work done. And by work, I mean hot stewardship for what I love to be here doing. stuff I'm excited to do, but it's still like it's still a thing to do, things to do. And I realized that it would be really supportive for me to invite Matt to give me a tarot reading for Moon to Moon promo period, which I'm now in. He has been doing these readings for me at least a year now. He gives me these promo tarot readings that are so supportive at guiding me to be with what's present for all different parts of me that are feeling super razzmatazz, and other parts of me that might feel more worried or scared, and just being able to be with all these different parts of me that promo can bring up. And I asked specifically, can you also just ask about today? Like, what's the level of stewardship to bring to today, i.e. yesterday, Saturday? And the card was the Fool. 0. And I'm just really kind of blown away by the humor and the brilliance of the tarot. Once again, because 0 is like a very clear direction, and it's a very bossy assignment. Because it's like such a boundary. It's like the parts of me that were like, well, I'll just let you know, like, just check my email for a second. Or like, maybe I should just go look at Instagram, like maybe I'll just send that one email, and then it's like 0. Do you want to receive the wisdom of the tarot? We told you 0. So it was pretty amazing to feel that invitation. So I'm setting that here in the space with y'all in case this might be fun to play with for yourself. It's like, what does it feel like to say there is 0 for you today, to do today for fill in the blank, like project, fill in the blank, like thing that you're working on? There is 0. It's not like just do a few things. And so what the learning there for me was just noticing what happened to my body with that invitation. It's just like, whoa, what would I do with this Saturday? Like, what does the Saturday want to be? What will unfurl for me with the 0 assignment? And it was just like a Ferris Bueller kind of day that just like one thing rolled into the next thing, like without a plan. And all these magical coincidences happened. I felt it was very psychedelic. Like it felt like there were like themes returning throughout the day. Like the universe is trying to point to stuff. And I felt so much more attuned to it because I was in this 0 assignment, Saturday fun day. Saturday in the city with Matt, my boyfriend. And one of those magical things is we just, spur of the moment, decided to go see a movie directed by a friend of his. It's the title of the film is Sing Sing, and it's so good. It's not a huge release, but look for it if it might be in your city. I highly recommend it. But setting up in the hallway of the movie theater to do like a little product sale and meet and greet is Tommy Wiseau from The Room. Like, The Room. Tommy. And, I'm really slow to catch on to cult things, like, as in popular things people are all talking about, like, inside jokes in pop culture. Like, it was only in the last year that I discovered the movie The Room, which is a cult classic and hilarious because it's so bad. But it's also genius. And Tommy Wiseau is the writer, director, producer, and star of this film. And then James Franco created the disaster artist and plays him. So just to place it in case you don't know, I once didn't know about this, and everyone else seems to have, gotten the nudge. I'm the one who's like just Googling, like, wait, what is Brat Summer? Wait, who's Ray Gun? Like, I am always and have always my whole life been like just one of the last people to understand like that there's a joke going around pop culture or like a movie everyone's seeing or whatever. But anyway, we got to like chit chat with Tommy Wiseau before the movie started. No one else was around. And then after the movie, we bought products and got our photo taken. And then as we were walking off, he points to me and he goes, "You look really good, by the way." This just like delights me so much. If you know Tommy Wiseau's voice, like you can hear, "You look really good, by the way." I mean, who even am I now? I'm like a new chapter of my life. Like, thank you, full moon in Aquarius, like full moon and Tommy Wiseau. Wow. So here we are. The frequency is set, looking really good, by the way, and rolling on with the rest of my life post experience. So hope that you enjoyed that one. I will put links to the room for those of you who have not heard of this. It's going to be great, and I'm excited for you to be delighted by this piece of art. So, segue, art making. Moon to Moon is finishing early bird. If you're hearing this on Monday, the 19th of August, it's the last day for the early bird pricing of Moon to Moon. And then we move into regular pricing promo window. The equity pricing is the same no matter what, as well as other like special pricings that I have for current students and alums of this class. So if you are interested in Moon to Moon and you would like $100 off tuition, inviting you to go feel into the course page, just let it talk to your body. And if you feel a resonance, I look forward to seeing you there. It's a very, very, very powerful class. And it teaches the heart of all that I do and all that what my work is about. It's named after this podcast. All right. So let's move into introducing my guest today. So excited to welcome you to the name and to the work of Maria Minnis. If you have not heard of Maria, and if you are a big fan of Maria, I'm so excited that you get to experience her in conversation about her work and her what opens her heart, what she's really cares about, what the way her heart and her mind work together to create and imagine new ways of being in relationship to our bodies and our ecosystems, to the world that we're living in today, and to the one that we're stewarding a vision for the future. It's a really powerful conversation. I was just re-listening to it, just marveling at Maria's skill as a word maker and a speaker, and really feeling on listening like the somatic experience of her voice in my body. And just, I'm so excited to be giving that to you, Moon to Moon listeners, here today in this episode. We talk about how we met in our conversations, so I'm not going to speak to that here in the intro, but let me read Maria's bio. Maria Minnis is an unapologetically Black, Jewish, and queer tarot reader of 20 plus years who teaches people about blending their spirituality with magic, liberation work, and eroticism in their everyday lives. She believes that the end result of all magic should be to cultivate a more equitable and empathetic planet. Her highly acclaimed antiracism tarot workbook, Tarot for the Hard Work, is available online and in stores. Follow her work on Instagram at Minnis and at mariaminnis.com. And I'll also add that I'm very excited to share that in our conversation, we discuss at the end how she's going to be launching a podcast called Kinky Tarot. Let me double check. It's Kinky Tarot. And that podcast is now out. There's an intro episode, and then the Fool is out. It's called 00. The Fool, Enthusiastic Consent and Neurodivergent Angels. Amazing. And between these two projects, what you can feel here is how Maria attunes to what is present in her life and how to care for herself and give herself permission to be all that she is, and how the tarot as our friend, the tarot as a language, the tarot as a wisdom tradition. There's so many ways that we can define what the tarot is, but what it can be here is a support for tuning in to your expansive self, not just for yourself, but for the collective, and for how you interact with the collective, and for how you participate in reweaving stories for a more empathetic world, to use Maria's word. So I'll have a link to her Instagram, to Kinky Tarot, the podcast, to her book, Tarot for the Hard Work, and to her Instagram at Feminist, so that you can connect with Maria's work and her voice and her genius and her big heart, her big Leo heart in your own lives. So thank you so much, Maria, for spending time with me. Thank you for listening to yourself so that you can create from such an emergent place of self-love in ways that are so supportive to everyone else. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and enjoy. Welcome to Moon, Maria.
Thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here.
I was feeling into when I first reached out to say that I'd love to have you on Moon to Moon. It was probably about a year ago. I feel like it was when it was an announcement about your book coming out. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to talk to Maria. I want to talk about the book. I want to talk about what led to the book. And now here we are, and your book came out. It was January, right?
Yes, it came out this past January.
Yeah. So now we can also talk about what it's like to have a book in the world, which is something I'm also holding. It's kind of an experience.
It really is. And by the way, your book, Living Astrology, is in my monthly planning routine. And so I am such a big fan and so stoked to be here and just excited to be in your presence and just talk a bit.
Yeah, thank you. I have your book with mine on my bedside table. They look very nice together, actually. They like coordinate well.
They really
Aesthetically.
do.
Well, thank you for being here. I always like to begin these with remembering how we connected. And I definitely know you through Instagram. I'm not sure how, I'm not sure if I can locate exactly when and how I connected with your name in Instagram. I love your feed so much. It's like the algorithm knows to send me your posts as they drop. And do you remember coming across me? I guess it's just kind of like the luck of Instagram.
I don't know either. It just seemed like one day we were just connected and really vibed together. I don't know when that was, but I was so happy we crossed paths. And also, thank you for the compliment on my Instagram feed. It is not curated at all. It's just straight up me, just chaos. And so it feels really affirming to know that somebody out there appreciates it.
Yeah. I love that it feels at least like you really share all of you there. And I tend to resonate most with those who share both um, their professional, selves alongside of their human selves and all the faces of that. Like pictures of you and your partner. It's just it's there's I feel affection for you in the way you present and share. So thank you.
Thank you. It's mutual.
Well, what I'd love to do then is I just would love to hear your story, like how you came to be Maria Minnis, published author, Tarot for the Hard Work, in 2024. I'd love to know things like what brought you to the tarot, what brought you to the book themes, what the book's about, and like how does a book come into being, right? It comes into being through the life of the human who's engaging with what they share. And so anything that you would want to share from your life story that just feels alive for you, just feel free to take up lots of space and share about it. Yeah.
Thank you for asking. Yeah, so I've been reading tarot for, um, wow, it's 2024, so over 20 years. And I came into it when a childhood friend of mine gave me um, my first tarot deck, the Heimdall Tarot, which in hindsight is a little, it makes me chuckle because it can be a difficult deck to connect with, but I'm really, really grateful that that was what I connected with because I got to form my own unique relationships with the archetypes that weren't necessarily totally informed by dominant Rider Waite Smith narratives. And I really started out with a personal relationship with the cards. I did not necessarily know very much about the collective meanings of the cards. I went with my intuition. I really loved examining the art and the symbolism. And I was definitely, I've always been into the esoteric nature of things. And so tarot was definitely something that I loved. I wasn't completely public with it. I now tarot is everywhere, but 20 years ago it wasn't as socially acceptable to carry around a tarot deck with you. Um, but yeah, so I had this really personal relationship with the cards, eventually got a handle on the collective meanings because I think, yes, I totally encourage people to read tarot intuitively, but I think it's also important to understand the collective energies that contribute to a particular card's energy. None of us are islands. And so I think there's a way that's, there are ways unique to us that we can blend both intuition and personal experience with the experiences that other people have had with these cards and the stories that they tell. The realities we create are the stories that we tell ourselves. And I see tarot as a storytelling tool. And so I went professional in 2017, and I have done thousands of readings since, and I find it to be so, so fulfilling. And one way that I find tarot to be particularly fulfilling is how many unique applications there are with these 78 archetypes. And I tend to use the tarot as sort of an analog for goal planning and organizing my intentions and so on and so forth, and embodying archetypes. And that really played into how this book came along. I spent most of my life growing up in rural Virginia and in a very conservative area. And I was there when a lot of well, when 45th president was elected, and there was a lot of um, emboldening of his supporters in my area, and I really didn't know what to do with that. The anti-racism groups in my area were mostly geared toward white people, and I really like, yes, there is a need for that, and I'm grateful that those efforts exist, but they didn't necessarily seem to give me guidance around how I can show up as a Black woman for for not only other Black people but oppressed and marginalized people um, in my area and across the world. And so I use the tarot, I use the major arcana to organize ways that I could just go out in everyday life, tiny ways that I could go out in everyday life to confront racism and to leverage the archetypes in order to sort of create this unique quote unquote activist identity that made sense for me and elevated how my unique skills and perspectives could lead into my own flavor of activism. And so I had this little notebook that I would work in the coffee shop every Friday morning, and I would go through card by card what it would be like to embody this archetype as an anti-racism activist, and what would be the things that the fool says, or what would be the risk that the hermit would take. And I went through that and used that notebook as sort of a guide around how I wanted to show up in the world today, because I didn't necessarily see myself as, capital A activist. I was like, I don't know if I fit into that, but I can wear these different outfits, these different archetypes, and step into those characters and really shine a light on different facets of how I could show up for my people and people across the world. And eventually that turned into a blog, which became kind of a cult favorite. And now it's a book called Tarot for the Hard Work, which has hundreds of activities, over 60 essays, and um, a whole guide around how to build your own personal anti-racism toolkit to confront not just racism out in the world, but also in our relationships and internalize racism within ourselves. Because, yes, I'm a Black woman, but I say in the book that I'm working through this stuff alongside anyone else who's reading the book, because I grew up in America and I have my own biases, and that's kind of how I wrote the book. Instead of being like top down, I have all the answers. I was just like, hey, these are these are the things that I've researched and experienced and included with what I know about the cards. And this is just guidance for me and you. I don't have all the answers, but I think through exploring the major arcana, we can come up with our own answers to how we can best show up for a more ideal future.
Mm, thank you so much. Yeah, how did it go from blog to book?
My friend, my sweet friend, and very, very, very talented tarot reader, Cassandra Snow, author of Queering the Tarot, reached out to me and was like, this needs to be a book. And I hadn't really thought of it that way. I was just like, totally fine with it just being a blog. Even though I tend to do well with like printed material that I can take around with me anywhere, I was just like, well, that was a lot of emotional labor that I put into the blog that every single week. And I had to do a lot of inner work and a lot of exploration and a lot of confronting and learning hard and difficult facts about the world that we live in and about myself and about the people in my life and the structures which I uphold just by nature of being in a fundamentally racist capitalist society. Um, and I was tired, but when Cassandra reached out to me, I realized that this project could morph into something that has more reach, and I considered the opportunity as an opportunity to create this book as a spell for the world. And I still say it's the biggest spell I've ever crafted or enacted. And I think if every single person did at least just like one activity from the book, then that how like there the reach is so there is so much potential reach for people to make change in themselves and in their communities. And I just thought of it like that, and like, oh, this could be a service to the world. Um, and so they connected me with the folks at Wiser, and it has just been it's just been a delight since then. And writing the book was very difficult. I'm very glad it's out there, but and yeah, I'm glad that Cassandra reached out to me. Otherwise, I think I would have just moved on from this project, but now it has a lasting um, presence in my life, and I hope it does for others as well.
Mm. It's very usable for book clubs and groups to engage with it together. It feels like it has capacity to be used as a tool in classrooms. It has such a reach beyond just like just the individual too. Mm-hmm.
Right. Actually, I'll share with you that my work is moving toward not away from anti-oppression, but moving toward approaching that work in a more community-oriented way. And I put I kept in mind while writing this book, like, this doesn't just have to be an individual experience. How can I design this book to prompt conversations and to prompt community? And I think there are a lot of topics in the book that we may not feel like we naturally have the tools to confront just by ourselves. Like sometimes it's difficult to accept that you have internalized biases, because we think, I'm a good person and I try, but having internalized biases doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that you are influenced by the environment in which you live, work, play, etc. So when you're by yourself, it might be easier to sort of bypass those difficult truths. But when we talk about those and open up about those with other people, we connect and realize we are human, and that's okay. We are not the only people who are working through these things. And by sharing our stories, sharing our experiences, we open ourselves up to healing healing the ways that we contribute, that we harm others through our everyday actions and habits. And I, I think this is a powerful tool both in individual and group settings, but in speaking specifically toward group settings, I think that there is a lot of community magic potential in it. And I am so, so honored to see, like, there are a ton of book clubs that have chosen this book as their book of the month. And like, I'm just like, what? People are gathering and talking about the words that I wrote. And like, it feels very validating. And the fact that I can even prompt these difficult conversations is
Yeah,
like, that's magic to me.
it is magic. And I'm obsessed with shame, and you know, shame hinges around this like trying to hold on to being a good person, but it's like so fragile. Like, you know, one step and we can be revealed swing pendulum as bad person. And I feel like in this powerful work that you're doing here and offering here, it's opening the space to like break that illusion and this distortion that the shame that we may wrestle with in this area, the biases that we've internalized just by being alive in this culture, that we can actually transmute these. And I agree, from holding workshops on shame, there's something incredible about the witness, being in witness, because it's usually witnessing that created the like original sense of shame, is like someone seeing you, and it's then through the vulnerability of being a human opposite others that this transmutation occurs and it begins to melt and something new emerges. And I can completely see the magic of your project in the world through this kind of community conversation. Mm.
I love that you specifically named shame as something that does come up in this work. And while I maintain that there are more important things than our egos, I can't deny that the work that I'm proposing that we do is easy. But I think when we see ourselves as part of something bigger, not just by knowing like I'm a person in this world of billions of people, but by having intimate conversations and witnessing and being witnessed, we reinforce the reality that we are all connected and we all have different things that we feel shame about. And I think one big step around preventing shame from inhibiting your ability to create change in the world is understanding and seeing other people admit their own shame. And somehow, magically, that can help us feel less bad about our own shame. And, we don't make progress when we sit and spiral in our shame, but there's a time and place to sit in that shame and to um, accept what is instead of pretending it doesn't exist. And I think that these book circles have created spaces where people seemingly feel really safe to finally confront the fact that, you know, we all contain multitudes. And yes, we do consider ourselves to be good people, but there's room to be better. There's room to not just be inspired, but also to inspire because we all have our own backgrounds and our own perspectives. We all have something to share. And even though we all come from unique backgrounds, the reality is that a lot of the feelings that we have when we do anti-racism work, they there are a lot of shared themes and shared feelings that when in isolation we might convince ourselves that we're the only one feeling this thing when in reality we're not. This work is hard, and if this work ever feels 100% easy, then there's more work to do.
Ooh, yeah, I love earlier how you said the realities we create. I think you said something like, the realities we create are the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah,
Is that what you said earlier? Yeah, it's
yeah,
just like, well, yeah, exactly.
right. We are all existing in the world with preconceptions um, and tints of where we've been and what we've seen, and it's how we talk about them and communicate about them and even think about them, the stories we have in our heads that create these individualized portraits of what reality is. And the brilliance of storytelling is that the stories can change anytime. Um, None of our stories have to be the same way forever. Stories are malleable, and so are we. So why not explore the power in that? Because there is, it's very potent.
Mm. Yes, this is making me think about. I love when you land on your website, it says longtime tarot reader, enchanting justice and the erotic. Putting enchanting as a like describing what you're doing to justice is just so magical as a pairing. I want to bring in the erotic too, but first I would love to hear you speak on because I think this is about reality creating through story, right? And
Mhm.
world building. I'm curious for you if what comes up for you when you think about enchanting justice.
Yes. I have in recent years fallen in love with the idea of enchantment. I, for so long, have just associated it with like fairy tales and so on and so forth. But I I couple that word with my magical practice, and I think that when we so okay, I'm gonna get a little bit nerdy. So this is
Please.
just okay. I perceive I I I I have a very like detailed mind where I pick apart things, and so I see the word enchant and I focus on the part of the word that's chant, and that's to me, chanting is a very big part of my practice. And when I chant, I conjure emotional connection, devotion, and um, and how do I say? I conjure reality. I feel that whatever my intention is more um, more has more potential the more I speak it and believe it. And so when I think about enchanting, I think about how my particular gifts and which are a lot of them are around language. I think I'm using language to craft magical relationships between myself and other people and the concepts of justice and the erotic and beyond. So to me it's like I'm speaking things into existence around the topics of, justice and living a more erotic sensational life. And I encourage people to do that through my language. And it I think sometimes we want to divorce magical language from topics like social justice because we think, oh, woo woo that means we're not taking this seriously. That means, we are just, closing our eyes and just hoping that the universe fixes it. And I'm like, no, like magic requires people and requires action. And to enchant and to enchant is also to create magic in this world. And so I think that magic also refers to our personal power and respecting that personal power and leveraging it to create change in the world, which I think fundamentally is exactly what magic does.
Hmm. Yes. Thank you. Sometimes I'll catch myself thinking that I have to respond to life without magic just from like old compartmentalization grooves. And I say to myself, "Oh, why am I doing anything as if I'm not a witch?" And that may or may not be a word that you play with, but I like to compassionately remind myself that anything can be approached this way. And I especially really just love um, the way you pair um, like really like such this energy of radiance and brightness and vitality and joy and like total self-love with topics that are very confronting and have like hard edges and that might be a place where we would collapse or feel afraid to get closer to them. And I think the way that you're holding these in each hand is so inviting and inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you. The way I see it, nobody benefits when I'm burnt out. And if, like this work is heavy, this work is a lot, but I'm also a human being with with interests and an undying love for the planet I live on despite it all. Why does my love for the fact that I am on this planet, you know, in this space at this time in this body, the magnificence of that, whatever you want to call it, coincidence of just being alive right now, right here, I find that to be fascinating. I find that to be inspiring. I find that fact to be, uh, you know, potentially full of joy. And it's because I love being alive. I love being on this planet that I think that, that's where a lot of my motivation to do this work comes from. It's like I recognize that unfortunately it's a privilege to be in a space where I love being alive so much, to have the safety and the security and the community that it takes for me specifically. I can't speak for other people, but it takes for me to feel like a whole being who is safe in this world. Because I value those things for myself, I feel very, not just morally obligated, but enthusiastic about
Mm.
helping other people access have the ability to choose to thrive. And so I this work is heavy and I could trudge through it, or I could move with lighter feet, and experience joy throughout the way, rest throughout the way. I'm not going to burn myself out because this work is supposed to be heavy and not magical and compartmentalized. Like, I exist in the world. My magic is with me anywhere and everywhere I go, and I can leverage it to create more, to create, to help people, to help liberate people, to liberate themselves.
Hmm. Mm. Ah, your chart is like really chatty right now because I feel you living so deeply the archetypes of your chart ruler with Venus in Cancer, but also your big bright Leo sun, which is just such a joy to bask in. Um, yeah, this really brings me this Venusian piece to the erotic, which is a big theme in your work. Um, and so I would love for you to just share currently, how do you define the erotic when people are like, what do you mean by the erotic? Like, what do you mean by the erotic? And how does it infuse everything that you're sharing here?
Yes, for me, living erotically is not necessarily just about sex, or what we typically attach the word erotic to in popular media. For me, it's more so connected to feeling, to sensing what it's like to be alive and to be able to enjoy that. And for me, the erotic is about being in the present moment and feeling the power of being in that present moment, and the courage to feel all that there is to feel in any given moment, uh, um, in whatever capacity you feel safe and empowered to do so. And I'm, a lot of my work, like I said, is about these hard topics, but I am, mm, I refuse to deprioritize joy and pleasure, and my relationships with all of my senses, just because I need to feel like a martyr in order to feel like
Mm.
I am a legitimate. I keep saying activist. I don't know what word I would describe myself other than witch, but for the purposes of explanation, I'll say activist. And so my work is, again, like, focused on creating opportunities for people to feel like they can freely choose to thrive however they can. And that, to me, is it's also it's connected with the ability for people to live in the present moment. I One of my past therapists said, and I don't mean this in a prescriptive or diagnostic way, but sometimes obsessing or being fixed on the past can look like depression and being um, fixed on the future can look like anxiety. And there is so much anxiety in this world when people don't know what to expect the next day, when people are not sure if they'll be able to make rent next month or have transportation to get to work the next day. There are so many things in our world that just pull our attention from being in the moment and feeling what it's like to be human and to feel what it's like to be able to pause and to feel what it's like to have the wind just roll onto your body and pass through, pass in front of you and through you, and to smell the flowers. Like why would you care about stopping to smell the roses if you don't have any food for dinner? And so when I think about erotic, I think about living in the present moment and feeling the present moment. And yes, a lot of my, you know, work in the quote unquote erotic realm is um, does center around sexual themes. I just want to note that, like, to live erotically is to live with gusto and feeling. And I want everyone to feel what it feels like to be alive, and what and I think that's a great that's a motivation that keeps me going.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. I I like to say, for me, the erotic is like wild, to feel wildly alive.
Yes.
And I feel like the I like your word sensational, like the like frisson of the sensation, and what a gift it is to, as you say, be able to pause and give that to yourself. Um, yeah, you you shared that you might have a podcast coming out. So,
Yes, I'm having Um, next week, I mean, whoa, what's going on? Next month, in May, I am, and this is the first time I'm actually talking about it.
okay.
I'm releasing a regular podcast that goes through all 78 tarot archetypes,
Mm.
and exploring the world of kink with each archetype. And they're little bite-sized episodes, no longer than like 15-20 minutes. And we just get to learn about all sorts of different kinks in the world, and how they relate to the tarot archetypes, and not just how they relate sexually, but how does this perspective, answering the question of how does this unique perspective of kink add complexity and depth to your understanding of each archetype? And that's not necessarily sexual, but for me, I really love adding complexity to these tarot archetypes, which, um, for better or worse, tend to get flattened a lot by social media. Like, the Fool is all about this, and the Justice card is always about fairness, or so on and so forth. And the I think there are, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, I think there are as many perspectives of the tarot as there have been people alive. Um, and and that's to say that there are so many ways of viewing the tarot. There isn't one way that works for everyone. And if I can add a little flavor to each archetype that makes you think of them in a different way, and it maybe inspire you to explore kink on your own, then I it's just a great way for me to blend kink and tarot, which are two things that I'm super, super passionate about and excited to share with the world soon.
I love this so much. Tell me, I love to think about kink and like um explore ways to expand my understanding of the word and its use. This sounds like the coolest project. I love that like you have tarot for the hard work and then you have tarot and kink over here. Tell me
It's
how
like
you just
my yeah, it's like my Instagram feed. It's there. I have so many different interests, and
yes.
you're never going to get just like one dimension of me in my understanding of the tarot.
Hmm. How do you define kink? Or like what does it feel what does it bring up
Ooh,
for you?
I think that for me, kink is about harnessing your personal power by choosing ways to explore yourself, other people in perhaps non-traditional ways. I sort of see kink as this broad umbrella of how we react to and handle our instinctual primal urges in ways that are safe and allow us the allow us the space to explore. Kink is about exploration. Kink is about personal power. Kink is about knowing oneself. And yes, there are so many things that fall under that, those umbrellas, but ultimately for me, it comes down to being able to claim yourself, your wants and your needs based off of your sense of personal power, personal boundaries, um, thoughtful communication, and honesty, rather than denying the parts of ourselves um, that might not be so acceptable in wider circles.
Hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that definition. I love it. I feel I really feel here your moon Pluto and Scorpio placement, just like the capacity to really just go there in all of the facets. Yeah. It's so zingy
Yeah,
and fun.
I love that. Thank you.
Well, will you share anything else you have coming up and how people can connect with you?
Yeah, that is currently the only thing really on my plate. I've been taking a little bit of a break since my book came out. So, um, so that's something that's on the books. I have my monthly Naked Tarot newsletter, which is my favorite thing that I write on a regular basis, which just includes examples of tarot in my real and personal life and free activities and so on and so forth. I find it to be very fun and I get a lot of great feedback on it. So listeners are invited to join the club on my website, mariaminnis.com. And you can find me on Instagram at feminist. So it's my it's FE plus my last name, MINNIS.
Hmm. Highly recommend. Thank you so much for coming on Moon to Moon, Maria.
Thanks for having me. I so appreciate you and this podcast, and I am beaming after our conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Thank you for sharing yourself with me, with Moon to Moon listeners, and with the world. For those of you who are feeling connected, inspired, and expanded by Maria's voice and Maria's message, I'm encouraging you to check out the links in the show notes to find more ways to work with Maria. And a reminder then, for those of you considering Moon to Moon, my fall course on illuminating the path of the inner voice and learning how to hear yourself, learning about the moon in astrology, learning about inner child healing, all the things that I weave with my synthetic magic. This course, Early Bird, ends Monday, August 19th, and then we move into regular enrollment into the first week of September. That's when we begin. All right, everything that you need is at the course page. I'll have that link in the show notes as well. Thank you so much. If you enjoy Moon to Moon and the kinds of things that you hear here, and you haven't yet left a review or a rating, I would be so grateful if you would take a moment to do that right now. It's really supportive to the podcast and helps other humans find their way to these words if they might support them. Thank you.